Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Laura Szabo-Kubitz, and I'm one of the co-leads of the California Alliance for Student-Parent Success, also known as the Alliance. Thank you so much for joining us today for today's webinar as we come together to explore key findings from our new reports and strategies for enhancing data practices in support of student parents and their families. To start, we have a couple of housekeeping items. Please note that the chat is open, so please feel free to comment and share insights throughout today's discussion. Also, if you have any questions during the session, simply click on the Q&A icon on the control panel and submit your question there. We will answer what we can via that function, and then we'll hold the rest for the Q&A at the end of the webinar. Please also note that we will send the recording to all registrants following this event, and it will also be posted on the Alliance's website at castudentparentalliance.org, which we will also put up on a slide later. So to kick things off, we'd love to get a sense of who's joining us today and where folks stand in terms of knowledge about student parents in California. So we're going to put two poll questions up right now for all of you to answer. We'll just take a minute for folks to answer. What research area do you want to learn more about? Financial aid, childcare, housing, family serving institutions, or data collection? Great. Okay, so it looks like we're getting the most votes so far for data collection at 33%, followed by family serving institutions, and then also interest in housing, childcare, and financial aid. So all five are top priorities for the work of the Alliance, and it's really helpful to hear from all of you kind of which are the core areas that you're most interested in learning about. So thank you. And then we have one more question that should pop up in a moment. The question will be on a scale of 1 to 5, how knowledgeable, how knowledgeable are you about student parents in California? So 1 being not at all knowledgeable, all the way up to 5 being very knowledgeable. And this is just helpful for us so that we know for future efforts, the extent to which people are comfortable with the information or that, would like to learn more. Looks like we're getting quite a range. So it looks like, sorry, I need to scroll down here. Yeah, it looks like quite a range. I'd say about most folks kind of feel like they're somewhat acquainted with the information. So that's a great temperature check, and we hope that the information that we provide today will help everyone learn even more. So thank you so much for doing that. So for today's agenda, I'll start us off by introducing the speakers and the California Alliance for Student Parent Success. Next, we'll explore key findings from new research from the Alliance, looking first at statewide student parent data, and then a review of current data practices on student parents within the CSU system. And as shared, we'll leave time at the end for Q&A. Next slide, please. So I've already introduced myself. Again, I'm Laura Szabo-Kubitz, and I'm the Alliance co-lead and senior policy fellow at California Competes. And I'm here today with AJ Johnson, Policy Director at California Competes, Maya Valerie, Alliance Co-Lead and Senior Policy Analyst at EdTrust-West, and Melissa Valenzuela-Stuckey, Director of P16 Research at EdTrust-West. Now to share a little bit about the California Alliance for Student-Parent Success, which was created last year to shift policies, practices, resources, relationships, decisions, and beliefs to improve life outcomes of student parents in California. As an alliance, we are focused on driving collective action among a diverse group of stakeholders towards supporting the post-secondary success and comprehensive well-being of student parents and their families. The Alliance is administered by California Competes and EdTrust-West, two organizations that joined forces to leverage their unique strengths and expertise to drive meaningful change. We do this important work alongside the Alliance's diverse membership that consists of organizations and individuals focused on a range of issues, including basic need security and poverty elimination, child welfare, civil rights, economic development, health, housing, higher education, and social justice. Oh, excuse me, allergies. And we're supported by a robust advisory committee that includes student parents and professionals across multiple sectors, including research, law, direct service, and early childhood education. Our committee provides guidance and expertise to help inform our strategies for advancing student-parent success. And if any advisory committee members are in the audience today, please feel free to give a wave in the chat. We'd love to see you. So what specifically does the Alliance do? The Alliance has 4 anchoring activities through which we advance our mission and vision. Through policy advocacy, we advance reforms that emerge from identified student-parent needs, like our co-sponsored legislation, the Gains for Student Parents Act, which AJ will share the latest on in just a moment. We also engage in capacity building and recently launched a community of practice focused on strengthening institutional practices at community colleges to create an inclusive and supportive environment where student parents can thrive. Our first cohort is with Reedley College and Long Beach City College. For research and analysis, we investigate policies and practices that would best support student parents and their families, which is what, of course, we will be sharing with all of you today. And for community engagement, we convene organizations and individuals across the state, and most importantly, student parents themselves, to work together to support and strengthen cross-sector efforts for systems change. I'd like to now turn it over to my colleague AJ, who will share an exciting update about the Alliance-sponsored AB 2458.
Thanks, everyone. Really happy to be here this morning. I'm AJ with California Competes, and not to bury the lead, but on Sunday, Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 2458, the Gains for Students Parent Act, into law. So we now have a new state law to support student parents in California. This law will allow colleges to comprehensively identify student parents, so that data collection piece that people voted on the poll, and increase their access to financial aid. We're now going to start that road to implementation. And the first thing we do on the road to implementation is celebrate this massive win for student parents in our state. So we're going to celebrate and raise awareness about the bill. And if we want to celebrate together, if you feel like cheering, clapping, or sharing an emoji in the chat, please take a moment right now to enjoy this milestone together for student parents and our collective contribution. So whether that was the research to inform the policy, actions to support the bill's development and passage, or reaching out to the governor and coloring a page and sending a letter, you are appreciated, and thanks for helping making this happen and possible on the road to implementation. So hooray. So I'll now talk about what the bill will do. So what the law will do, since it's now a law. So first, we're going to enhance financial aid access and financial support for student parents by requiring colleges to share more information on the public benefits and programs and tax credits that are available to them, including cost of attendance information and how to request a cost of attendance adjustment. We're going to update net price calculators, which lets people plan and budget for college. How much should they expect to pay or need in order to cover their expenses during their time studying, and then contact information about how do I get all of this information. for first generation students or students who are, as student parents don't have a lot of time. They've got all these competing responsibilities. So how do we get that information to them really easily so they can boost their financial supports? The second thing is to require automatic cost of attendance adjustments. Now, that's a technical term from the financial aid world. Not a lot of people have heard about this, but each college should have a cost of attendance website, and we'll talk about that later in the Q&A about how to find that, navigate that. But this helps people cover their true costs, whether that's transportation, housing, food, childcare expenses, medical expenses. You can actually go to financial aid and have them adjust that for you. The bill will also require institutions to collect and report student parent data to system offices. So at the campus level, we'll identify who a student parent is, send it up to the segments. And then the fourth part is that we'll actually include student parent data in the Cradle to Career data system, which is California's way to evaluate and identify policies that are supportive of students, people's trajectory through college and career pathways, and we'll be able to use that system to see how student parents are faring. So there's a lot of components in the bill that we're excited to start implementing with you all together. So right now, what you can do to support the implementation of AB 2458, first, if you go to our website, we do have the fact sheet and the FAQ up if you want to just familiarize yourselves with the law, and what that will do for student parents. We'll change that into an implementation fact sheet soon with some deadlines and timelines and all that fun stuff. If you want to join us in thanking the governor and legislature for supporting student parents and being champions for us, we welcome that on social media and in other ways. And then elevate AB 2458 and share it with your networks. Send the email blast through email or through social media using our toolkit. All right. So that data collection and that attention to student parents that we will be implementing is actually going to really help with some of these big topics we're talking about today around student parent data collection and research and the information that we need. So I'm thrilled to share with you a few new research publications from the Alliance, which you can find using the link or the QR code. The first item I'll discuss is the Alliance's research agenda. Then I'll review some facts and figures from our new Student Parent Almanac. And before we dive into the details of those, I want to thank our supporters that made these new resources possible. So the ECMC Foundation, Imaginable Futures, the Michelson 20MM Foundation, and Tipping Point Community. Thank you for your investment in learning about and studying student parent needs in our state and making these publications possible. All right. So our first new publication is the Alliance Research Agenda. And we developed this agenda with some four main goals: to deepen our understanding of California student parents, to gather the evidence on state and institutional reforms that are available and out there, highlight gaps in current policies, practices, resources, and supports, and inform state policies and institutional practices to close equity gaps. Now, the research agenda focuses across our 5 policy priorities, which are from that poll earlier: financial aid, childcare, housing, family serving institutions, and data collection. So if you take a look at that agenda and reflect if there is a study or studies you've seen on a topic, or if you're part of a research team working on any of these questions, or if you have this information, if you had this information as a faculty or staff on campus, how could you use that information to help students? Basically, if you've done this research on any of these topics, please share with us. But I hope you'll take a moment to look at that research agenda, contribute, maybe pick up a study into one of these areas, and we'll learn more about how to better serve student parents across the state. Great. So next slide, we're actively advancing our research agenda with 2 comprehensive reports. So we're excited to provide the kind of the first public preview of this California Student Parents Almanac, which leverages federal data to offer an in-depth analysis of the identities and educational experiences of student parents across California's colleges and universities. So this is actually what's out there from a couple of data sources, but there's 4 parts to this report. It's quite detailed, and our team did a great job on it. So congratulations to senior researcher David Radwin, who was the lead. But part 1 provides insights into who are the student parents in California, where they live, their race, ethnicity, sex, family size, marital status, if they're first generation. So kind of all the demographics that we might know about through federal data. Part 2 sheds light on what a student parent's educational experience look like, meaning their choice of institution, housing arrangements, time between high school and college, attendance patterns, educational goals, things like that. The 3rd part outlines how student parents pay for college, including the Pell Grants, loan amounts, work hours, and public benefits access. So how are they making that financial support work? What's available and what's happening, including student debt. And then finally, part 4 offers recommendations for data collection and use to better understand student parent needs, inform policy, and track progress. So please check that out. And in each item that we're going through, there's replication links. If you'd like to generate this from a more detailed campus or regional level or segment level, or if you're from another state and want to do this for your state, please feel free to reach out. But to answer these types of questions, we use 2 data sources, the 2021 American Community Survey, and the ACS the American Community Surveys provides the demographics, national, state, regional, local estimates, race and ethnicity categories, annual trends, graduate students that are not included in this presentation, but the data is in there if you want to look at graduate students, and characteristics of children and spouses. Then the second data source is the National Post-Secondary Student Aid Study Administrative Collection. NPSAS is the kind of alphabet soup there, conducted by U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics. And that's, again, student characteristics like degree program, attendance cost, institutional variables like childcare availability or location, and non-degree seeking students. So these were the 2 main sources used for this report. So now I'll just briefly talk about what some of the highlights from the almanac and what the data tells us about student parents in California. So there are about 300,000 undergraduate student parents enrolled in California public institutions. So 1 in 8 students are caring for a dependent while managing their studies. That actually outnumbers the University of California's combined undergraduate and graduate enrollment, as well as the total undergraduate enrollment at colleges of at least 35 other states. So 300,000 students is a lot. A majority of student parents are people of color. Almost half of student parents are Latinx. Supporting student parents isn't just about improving individual outcomes, it's about addressing systemic barriers that disproportionately affect communities of color. So when you support student parents, you're also supporting racial equity goals. We also found that student parents are more likely to be women, with 15% of female students parenting, and nearly twice the rate of male students at 8%. We also found that student parents are more likely to be female across all races and ethnicities. To me, this is more so a reflection of our society and the way caring for children and raising children is distributed. For faculty, or if you're staff or faculty in your class, what this means statistically, 1 in 6 of your students who are women likely have childcare responsibilities and could benefit from flexible classroom policies, allowing for sick kids, pickup accommodations, things that kind of might make that class more successful. Might be important to have some resources in your syllabus for parenting accommodations as well. So the next thing we found is that while about 2 out of 3 student parents are married, women are more than 3 times as likely as men to be single parents. So what you see in the last few slides is that this is not just a race or gender neutral topic. When campuses invest in supporting student parents, they're making a critical investment in the success of women and people of color, especially women of color. And these investments have the potential to advance equity, economic mobility, and social justice, ensuring that those who have been historically underserved receive the support they need to succeed for them and their families. When we look within California, it also reveals a higher percentage of students with children are in the state's inland areas, which are more rural and have few options for college than the areas along the coast where many of our campuses are located. So what does that mean? It means longer commutes for student parents to attend college, increased demand for flexible learning options like online programs could be really important for creating that access or reducing cost. Commuting, especially gases, a lot of things going on in the news around gas prices, and it's been like that for a while. So expanding access to post-secondary education that truly meets student parents where they are juggling academics, raising children, and as we've seen on this slide, facing limited physical college options is critical for fostering multi-generational success and access. And again, to the multi-generational impact of supporting student parents, let's take a look at this slide, which most student parents in California are raising 2 or more children, totaling over 500,000 children. That exceeds the total number of children in each of 15 states and the District of Columbia, each, not combined. So that's actually, when we think about how we're supporting student parents and their children, this is a lot of children to be supporting. So the passage of AB 2458 and other bills and even institutional supports has a huge impact. The next slide, more than half of student parents, 55%, have at least one child under 6 years old, a group that requires more supervision. The childcare needs are different, which translates to higher financial costs for childcare compared to older school-age children. So 32% of student parents have children under the age of 3, and that's a critical developmental period that sets the foundation for future learning and growth. By supporting student parents, you're not just investing in their education, you're also investing in the well-being and future of our youngest Californians. Student parents tend to be older, with a median age of 34 years, in contrast to students without children who have a median age of 21 years. So student parents also have a wider distribution of ages compared to their non-parenting students, as you see on the graph on the slide. The older median age of student parents is driven in part by their greater tendency to delay their post-secondary enrollment and to delay it for longer, which the Almanac does dig into. This underscores the need for California to modernize higher education. Today's students aren't just recent high school graduates. They're older individuals juggling work, family, and other responsibilities. And we have to adapt our higher education structures to meet them where they are in their life's goals and achievements and work. All right. So the next slide is around first-generation college students. Those whose parents did not finish college tend to experience more difficulty in navigating college than their peers who have at least one parent who completed college. Studies show that they persist in and graduate college at lower rates. So we found that majority of student parents are first-generation students, 61%, compared with 50% of non-parenting students. So this difference is about the same among students enrolled in the community colleges and public universities. So it does take more effort for first-generation students to navigate all the college language, systems, and resources. All of these systems are important, but where does that college knowledge come from? How do you get the 411? So what is the unwritten, informal, but extremely important knowledge beyond getting A's in your classes? And how do we get that to student parents who are first generation and maybe not be learning that from a prior parent? All right. So next, the Almanac digs into the details. Where do student parents go to college? So 2/3 of student parents attend the state's community colleges, while fewer attend public universities. So in fact, student parents are concentrated in the community college system, where almost 1 in 5 community college students, 19%, or 281,000 student parents, students are a parent. So that's compared to only 1 in 25, or 4%, totaling 26,000 students at the UC and CSUs. While we know from an earlier slide that student parents make up about 12% of the overall student population, their representation among four-year universities is disproportionately low. So we're really thinking, what strategies can we implement to ensure that student parents can achieve the economic advantages of a bachelor's degree as well, and the multi-generational success that can come with that. All right, just a few more data points here. Across all California public higher education segments, student parents are more likely than non-parenting students to delay their enrollment in college. So 61% of students' parents delayed their enrollment by at least 1 year, more than twice the rate of non-parenting peers. And 64% of parenting students delayed enrollment in a community college by at least 1 year, compared to 33% of non-parenting peers. Delayed enrollment is again associated with a smaller likelihood of completion. It's believed that you tend to forget things from high school if you're putting things off for college, and you might, brain store information differently. And so when you come back years later, there can be that attrition. So you have to spend sort of twice as much time remembering, getting caught up, and then advancing again at that pace. Only 17% of undergraduate students' parents enrolled full-time for the academic year, compared with 37% of non-parenting students. Similar disparities exist at both the community colleges and at the CSU and UC. So the bottom line is, if you are not enrolled full-time, you really can't complete on time. That's how these kind of goals are measured. So full-time students are more likely to persist and graduate. And if you're not full-time and full year, it does delay your career earnings and potential over your lifespan. So our research agenda data collection efforts really ask, what would student parents need to be able to take a full-time schedule? How do we get that level of support infused around them so that we can have on-time and completion? So when student parents do enroll, they tend to pursue shorter-term credentials at a higher rate than their non-parenting classmates. Among student parents, 53% seek an associate's degree, 17% seek a certificate, compared with 48% and 10% of non-parenting students. In contrast, non-parenting students pursue bachelor's degree at higher rates than their parenting students, so 37% compared to 26%. So from the last few slides, we see that student parents are more likely to delay their enrollment, and when they do enroll, they tend to take longer to complete their studies, since they often can't attend full-time and year-round. And on this slide, we also see they're pursuing shorter-term credentials rather than bachelor's degrees. So by addressing barriers and creating equitable pathways to bachelor's degrees, we can help maximize multi-generational success and expand opportunities for both parents and their children. So now we're turning over into student parents' college financing. So how much do student parents work? Nearly half of student parents work at least 40 hours or more, compared to 19% of non-parenting students. So that's over twice the rate. Basically, before accounting for the time they spend taking care of their children, student parents are especially time constrained relative to their non-parenting peers. One piece of the solution that will give student parents more time to study and parent is maximizing their financial aid, which is one of the goals of AB 2458. So we hope to see that implemented swiftly. And then the next slide, receiving a federal Pell Grant. The key federal need-based aid program for undergraduate students is often used as a proxy for low-income status, because most awards go to students near the bottom of the income distribution. So 46% of student parents received a Pell Grant in 2019 to 2020. And when we invest in student parents, we're not just providing assistance, we're helping break that cycle of poverty and creating better economic futures for students from low-income backgrounds. All right, 2 more items. Student parents are more likely to receive public benefits compared to their non-parenting peers. Again, a lot of the thresholds here are related in reflection to a poverty level. So for example, 22% of student parents receive CalFresh food benefits, more than twice the rate of non-parenting students. So these numbers are only a fraction of the eligible population who could qualify for these benefits. We're actually going to be working on expanding access to public benefits program and participation. And on our website, we do have a public benefit finder that helps folks navigate to the programs, apply, and just learn about all the benefits that they may qualify for. And then the next slide, let's look at borrowing rates and loan amounts for the two groups. So 20% of student parents took out federal student loans compared with 17% of non-parenting students. And what's more striking is the difference in borrowing amount. So student parents borrowed a median of $8,300, while non-parenting students borrowed a median of $5,500. So these figures highlight a gap in financial security. As we've seen in the previous slide, students' parents face greater financial pressures, underscoring the need for tailored support to ensure they can succeed without carrying a disproportionate debt burden. Great. So please check out the report, the almanac, the research agenda, and you can access those and the accompanying infographic using the link and the QR code. If you have any questions about this, you can reach out to us and especially to David to talk deeper about those. And I'll turn it over to Melissa and Maya to go over the other new publication from the Alliance. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, AJ. Such rich data. It's really exciting to see everything that you guys were able to illuminate with all of those stats. So thank you for painting that picture. So I'm going to speak a little bit to another one of the publications that AJ mentioned. And before we begin, I'd love to know who has connections to the CSU. So if you could just drop in the chat, I know many of us have some kind of connection to the system. So if you attended a CSU, are currently enrolled at one, or work at a CSU, we'd love to know. So just show some love in the chat. And in part, I ask that because it may go without saying, but the CSU is a really important system. It's the largest and most diverse public four-year university system in the entire country. And that means what happens at the CSU is extremely important for moving the needle on equity and outcomes, even though, as AJ mentioned, parenting students do make up a smaller proportion of students at the CSU than other systems. But what the CSU does and what individual campuses within the system do have the potential not only to improve outcomes for its parenting students, but also to set an example for other colleges and systems. We also know there's a really robust transfer pipeline from the California community colleges to the CSUs. And as AJ shared, the community colleges serve very high rates of parenting students. So our work focused on the CSU specifically and how different campuses are collecting and using data to strengthen their services and supports for parenting students. In making the invisible visible, we focus on elevating the voices and experiences of individuals who are directly involved in supporting parenting students across 11 CSU campuses. You can check out the report to learn a little bit more about the campuses that we connected with. We collected information through survey responses and focus group conversations to provide insights into both the strengths and areas for improvement when it comes to data collection and use, to make sure that we're really understanding the unique challenges and needs of parenting students within the CSU system. Today, we're going to share some highlights from two bright spots in particular that are uplifted in the report, as well as a set of policy recommendations for strengthening data collection and use. And in terms of bright spots, which Maya is going to jump on in a little bit to talk about, Sacramento State and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo really stood out from the pack and have some practical lessons to share around robust and intentional data collection. Sac State is known for its robust support programs that address both academic and non-academic needs of parenting students, including childcare services, financial support, and community building activities. And Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is recognized for innovative approaches that integrate flexible academic policies, targeted mentoring, and comprehensive support networks that are specifically tailored to the needs of parenting students. So we really felt that in addition to kind of giving a bird's eye view of some of the themes that campuses are experiencing in terms of data collection, we wanted to capture some practical, potentially replicable strategies, and that's what these two bright spots include. So before I kick it to Maya, just a couple kind of conceptual framing pieces that we found helpful during this work. One is that we really think it's important to understand that data collection is never just done for the sake of gathering information. Data should always serve as both a flashlight and a key. And the two bright spots that the report highlights are really succeeding at doing that. So in terms of using data as a flashlight, the bright spots are using information to really draw focus and attention to the needs of parenting students, And they illuminate specific needs. So rather than kind of fumbling around in the dark, these data can really help to show what is being experienced by students and what support is needed. And then in terms of a key, we like that metaphor because we think it's really important to understand that data can unlock resources. It can open doors to targeting support that otherwise might not be accessible. So for example, being able to quantify how many parenting students a campus serves can allow campuses to apply for federal grants that they might not otherwise be able to access. And finally, another kind of helpful frame that's presented in the report is what types of data should campuses and systems be thinking about collecting? We felt like it was helpful to segment the types of data that should be collected, and some of what AJ highlighted also falls into these buckets. But we can think of the data that is needed in 3 different categories. One is demographic data. So who are parenting students at the CSU? What other intersectional identities are they bringing into their classes and college experience that are helpful to understand when figuring out how best to remove any barriers that might be in their path? Second, we think about outcome data. So what are students kind of being supported to achieve? Where are there gaps that need to be addressed? Are students earning their degrees within 6 years, for example? And then finally, student needs data. So this really gets into some of the kind of rich qualitative information on what students are actually experiencing and what obstacles or challenges they face, but also really crucially, what assets are they bringing into the classroom that maybe are not being leveraged or could be better leveraged. And so I'm going to pass it to Maya to take us on a little bit of a deeper dive into some of our bright spots.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. So like Melissa shared, we through this research, we in focus groups and surveys, we found 2 institutions, so Sacramento State and Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, that stood out as bright spots for their data collection as well as their utilization to advance targeted supports and resources for parenting students. I believe that Sacramento State may be on folks' radars just because of the work that Dr. Myers-Dillon has done, which has been amazing, but super excited that we were able to unearth another institution, so Cal Poly SLO, in our research. And so Cal Poly SLO now has dedicated capacity to strengthen their data collection and program continuity. And so what this means is that the program, their Students with Dependence program, which was an unfunded, initially at its inception, an unfunded student-led coalition, is now formally funded and backed by the institution. And so there is now a full-time student service coordinator, which is really important in terms of data collection. Now institutional knowledge is preserved and lives within that role, so that student services role, instead of living in the, the student staff and student assistants who were previously often volunteering for that role or just kind of supported the position. So now institutional knowledge is preserved and data is now residing in that role. One of the really cool things that Cal Poly San Luis Obispo did was create an intake form that offered the institution a snapshot of its parenting students. And so want to underscore that an intake form is not the end all or the be all. It's not the ideal method of collecting data on parenting students, but it does provide some information that is useful for the institution as they want to target and create targeted policies and practices for parenting students. A little bit more about the intake form. In the 2022 to 2023 academic year, almost 100 parenting students completed the intake form. And again, this is an opt-in form, so not ideal. But yeah, 100 students filled it out, opted in, filled it out. And it provided the program and the institution information about the students, which I'll share in the next slide. But it also enabled the program to personalize its handoffs and begin to think through what supports are needed to remove barriers for these student parents and their, for their success as well as their well-being. And so what the intake form found was that most student parents at Cal Poly were transfers as well as graduate students. Another key finding was that several students had a more than 100-mile round trip commute to campus. And that was huge. That finding was not necessarily surprising, I think, for the institution, but it was huge, and it led to housing focus groups where the program and the institution got to learn more about the housing and commuting experiences of their student parents. And so through those focus groups, found that we're able to have conversations with student parents and found kind of what units they like. So were preferred, so they wanted 2-bedroom units versus obviously like dorm style, the amenities that they needed, if the campus were to develop on-campus family housing, as well as if it were to begin to partner with off-campus housing folks to get family housing for its students. We also, as I mentioned, Dr. Haley Myers-Dillon has done incredible work at Sacramento State. And one of the things that she's done is created a student parent peer ambassador program. And so student parent peers at Sacramento State, they get to work one-on-one with other parenting students. And so they help these students navigate the institution. They help them get acclimated. They support their sense of belonging, but also in their role as ambassadors, they serve as data collectors. And so this is really important, as we all know, because lived experience, student parents, all of our students, the student parents, their lived experience is so rich and chock full of qualitative and quantitative data. And so ambassadors get to essentially elevate the needs and experiences of their peers, to administrators, to staff and faculty. And so, yeah, they get to serve as those liaisons, and again, sharing the stories of and wealth and rich data of their peers. There's also a partnership that the Parent and Families Program, again led by Dr. Myers-Dillon, they partnered across campus to bring in data on the institution's parenting students, as well as resources for its student parents. And so in 2018, the Parent and Families Program collaborated with the On-Campus Children's Center, as well as the Financial Aid Office, which led to an identification of over 3,000 parenting students at Sacramento State. This also led to Sacramento State's first C Campus Award, which was over $500,000. The first C Campus Award provided a new voucher system, allowed the institution to provide a new voucher system for its student parents, which provided increased flexibility as well as childcare options, additional childcare options for its parenting students. And this was really important because, as we know, the On-Campus Children's Center doesn't, the hours are not always conducive, or they don't always align with student parent schedules. And so this flexibility was a game changer. In 2022, following that initial award, Dr. Myers-Dillon also applied for, as part of her doctoral research, applied for the second C Campus grant, and that led to an award of almost $2 million, as well as an identification of 9,340 student parents. And so in that cross campus collaboration, we saw that, we saw the C Campus Award, or Sacramento State was able to get 2 C Campus awards, as well as identify, again, that 1 in 3 of its students are parents. So just really huge information for the institution. And then just have a few recommendations on how to, what you can do or advocate for on your campus or within your system as it relates to how to use data effectively to improve policy and track progress. And so similar to what was done at Cal Poly SLO, advocate for centralized responsibility and dedicated capacity to strengthen data collection. That can look like advocating for a full-time student service coordinator or professional development funds to support that data collection on parenting students. You can be like Sacramento State and collaborate across departments. So collaborate with your transfer center, your children's center, your institutional research office to make sense of data, as well as target supports like the C Campus grant. And lastly, we encourage y'all to create an online intake form that can be replicated across departments. And again, with the intake form, we know that it is it will be an opt-in form and not an ideal method of data collection, but it is helpful in understanding who student parents are. And I will now pass it over to Laura to take us into the rest of the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Maya. I really appreciate it. Before we move to the Q&A, we want to flag that the Alliance's website, whose URL is on this slide, is where you can find information about all of our efforts, as well as valuable resources, information, and updates related to student parents centralized all in one place. This, of course, includes all the new resources that we are sharing today. And for those of you who are interested, we hope all of you are, we encourage you to reach out to us to become involved with the Alliance. On our website, you can apply to join as a member, reach out to invest in our work, advocate alongside us, and sign up on our mailing list to stay connected and learn about opportunities to partner. So now we are going to turn to the Q&A, and thank you for all of your questions. Please do feel free to continue to add any to the chat, and if we can't get to all of them today, we will certainly be happy to follow up with you. So I think I'm going to direct the first question to AJ, and I'm going to combine two questions here. First, what is the impact of AB 2458 for graduate institutions? And then part two, now that this bill has been signed, we know the next step will be implementation. But for those who want to do something now, what can people do today to support student parents on their campuses?
Sure. So for AB 2458 for graduate students or graduate institutions, essentially that segment-wide policy that will be developed, one of the first deliverables is for the UC, CSU, and Community College Chancellor's Office to send out a policy around how to conduct financial aid adjustments in a more streamlined way. And so that guidance will come from the segments, and then institutions will implement that policy once it's out. So I'm sure there'll be, each segment will have their own process for setting and vetting that policy and joining along the way, and how that will apply for graduate students. But both undergraduate and graduate students have the opportunity to maximize their federal financial aid and have all those options on the table for them. So it applies to everybody. And then I think the other thing that applies to everyone in the bill, for including graduate students, is that resources page. So what are the public benefits and things that can make college more affordable besides financial aid? Not just financial aid or cost of attendance, but tax credits, programs, childcare subsidies, housing or housing vouchers or programs, or on-campus housing. So how can student parents benefit, including graduate students? We know a little bit more about graduate student housing availability that's family friendly. And so does a campus offer that? We need to know and have it on one resource and disseminate that out to student parents. When you collect data on who's a parent, then you can start to send out messages or nudges or information to help people access those resources. So this applies for both undergraduate and graduates. I hope that answers the question, but please feel free to ask more in the chat. And then Laura, can you repeat the other question? Oh, I think it was, I see you're on mute. That's okay. I think it was, if we can go to the next slide, actually, it was like, how can we, what can we do right now?
Yes.
So AB 2458 has some implementation timelines and deadlines. It's not going to happen right away. So the policy is being developed by 2025 in July. And then campuses have it till the 2026 fall to set that into motion. But what you can do today is learn more about cost of attendance adjustment. It's a technical financial aid term that about 75% of student parents have never heard of this. And I think a lot of people, whether you're a student parent or not, may not know about cost of attendance adjustments. So the kind of instructions that we have for folks is to find your campus financial aid cost of attendance website, navigate to the adjustment form or process. It's usually a form or an appointment with financial aid. Review the dependent care allowance instructions, which means, what are your child care costs and how do you report those and ask for a financial aid change? And kind of, if you find anything or have any issues, like what do the students need to complete the process? What barriers are there to obtaining this information? And kind of review and familiarize yourselves with this policy and these forms and start pushing them out to your student parents so they can maximize their financial aid today. AB 2458 will help, future class years of student parents, but we don't have to wait for implementation to help people get their financial aid today.
Great. Thank you so much, AJ. That is very, very helpful. I wanted to answer a question that I saw come through the chat function, which was somebody was asking about if we could confirm the year that the data, the almanac is based on, and if there are references or summaries to the research methodology utilized. And wanted to flag that depending on the two different data sources that were used, it's either based on academic year 2019-20 data or the period between 2017 and 2021. And that if you look in the almanac itself, there are detailed methodological notes on pages 38 and 39, as well as 41 through 47. So all of that is in the report itself. I want to turn to a question that we have that came through the Q&A, and I'm wondering maybe if Maya could answer this. A participant wrote, I work at a community college that has a child development center. Having more funding that is consistent along with funding for students to attend can help our program support student parents. Have you been part of conversations to support existing and adding more centers to college campuses with the chancellor's office?
Yeah, I can jump in. So in the Alliance's policy agenda, and I'll get to the second part of the question, but in our policy agenda, we have urged policymakers as well as higher ed leaders to provide enough quality childcare options to meet the needs of student parents. And so we think of that by increasing, we know that we need to increase the number of childcare providers both on and off campus, as well as establishing as well as expanding childcare options, which are inclusive of after-school programs. One of the things that we're doing through the Alliance is we're working with two colleges, so Wheatley College and Long Beach City College through our Community of Practice initiative, which we just launched last week. And through that, we haven't had, again, since we just launched it, haven't had like explicit conversations on like supporting existing or adding more childcare centers to college campuses, but I do anticipate that will come up. I know that there are some really cool models that like Long Beach has in terms of how they're meeting their student parents' needs through after school like programming and things like that. So we're excited to learn from them, as well as hopefully allow, since there's like this like proof of concept out there that Long Beach has done and other institutions, that we can bring that information into our community of practice. But to answer your question, no, we have not been a part of conversations, explicit conversations with the Chancellor's Office to add more centers to college campuses. But we have highlighted in our policy agenda that it is a need, and that higher ed leaders and policymakers should focus on it.
Great. Thank you so much, Maya. That was super helpful. I think we're going to do one final question because I know we're reaching the 12 o'clock hour. So Melissa, I'll direct this to you. As one of the authors of these reports, who do you hope reads them, and what do you hope folks do with the findings?
That's a great question, Laura, and I invite others to jump into if I don't cover anything that they want to share. But I think there are a few different audiences that we really hope get a chance to read and use this information. So, individual CSU campuses, I think, and individual campuses within the other systems can leverage the data that these reports kind of uplift. And some of the recommendations embedded in the reports are kind of specific to different audiences. So both at that local level, I think there's a clear use case for the information in here, and at the state level. So, with the legislation that we're kind of celebrating today, there's a hope that there's a little bit of a sea change in how data is collected and used for student parents. I'm hoping that that's just the beginning of a push. And so policymakers is definitely another audience that we think is going to be really important to use this information. But AJ and Maya, I don't know if there's anyone else you want to make sure that this is in the hands of.
No, I mean, I think, like I said, the infographic is a really quick and easy way to help educate people about just student parents' visibility on campus and get people's thinking about that. If you've got research teams and research leads at your institution or segment level, see which of from the research agenda they want to tackle or take on or might already have done a report about. If you're a legislator, is there a research question like you want to know the answer to, and how could we get that information? And if you're from another state, like I said, the juggling rules report, or if you want to look just at your segment or just at your campus, David and folks can help you recreate and use those replication links. So to learn more. If you want to know about graduate students, like one of the questions, go ahead into that data system and pull that using the replication link. So, don't wait, just, keep educating yourselves and empowering yourselves with the facts and figures to help student parents achieve their educational goals.
Terrific. Well, thank you all so much for presenting to us today and for all the amazing work that you're doing and continue to do. And of course, thank you so much to all of you for joining us as participants. We really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, we'd love to hear from you one last time. So we're going to put up one final poll. And the question is, after this discussion, which areas of focus are you most eager to learn more about? And again, these are the 5 core policy priorities that the Alliance is focusing on. So financial aid, childcare, housing, family serving institutions, and data collection. So I'll pause just a moment for folks to answer. And I believe you can pick more than one. Great. And it seems there's a lot of interest in all of them. I think that the 2 highest ones are childcare and family serving institutions, but it looks like there's equal interest in all of them. So that is very, very helpful information. Thank you. So we hope today's session has deepened your understanding and inspired further action to support student parents and their families. Please do share these reports and findings with your networks and do apply it to your work as you can, whether through advocating for more inclusive policies, supporting student parents and their families on campus, or raising awareness with your legislative representatives and higher education leaders. If you have any further questions or would like to continue the conversation, we really hope you'll reach out to us so we can share more about Alliance activities and opportunities to support student parents and their families. And last but not least, we hope you have a great rest of your day. And for those of you who are in California like we are, please stay hydrated. This weather is insanely hot, so please take care of yourselves. Thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it.